There are always enormous challenges in any great endeavor, and plenty of people lined up who are going to tell you just how hard it is. But here you all are, still wanting to do it, not caring what Jack Warner or Mark Gill said. So for all of you who want to ask me, how do I get my film financed? Part of the answer is this. Forget about all the reasons not to do it. Forget about the films that failed. Forget about all the films that didn't get into Sundance or didn't get a distribution deal coming out of Sundance. Choose instead to focus on what has worked and learn from opening your eyes to the marketplace around you. The challenges of mounting a project are always unique to the specific material, so I can't tell you what it's going to take to finance your specific film. But I'm going to attempt today to share some principles, a sort of perspective for creating and maintaining traction in this business. Call it my version of a field guide to being an independent filmmaker. A producer friend of mine tells a story that gets to the heart of this matter. In the story, Lena Wertmuller is answering a question about her movie. The movie's about a young boy who witnesses the murder of his uncle. Years later, when he's a grown adult, he sees the murderer and goes through hell and back to bring him to justice. When asked what the movie is about, the director simply says, "It's about a boy who has a long, long love for his uncle." For any project to deserve your time, you have to ask yourself whether you have that kind of true long, long love for your project. To love it in a way that will last for years, if that's what it takes to bring it to the finish line. Just as important, to win in this business, you also have to ask yourself whether you have a true long, long love for learning the business. Let me define long for you. In his book called Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell looked closely at the specific characteristics it takes to truly master any complex task. His findings apply to everything from becoming a musician, a world-class athlete, or even learning to master financing independent films. In describing musicians, Gladwell said that research suggests that the primary thing that distinguishes one performer from another is not innate talent, but rather simply how much intense practice they've had. That's it. In fact, researchers have settled on what they believe is the magic number of hours of practice that are required to achieve expertise. You're going to love this one. 10,000 hours of practice. What's really interesting about this 10,000 hour rule is that research shows it applies virtually everywhere. The findings show that almost without exception, the people at the top of every profession don't just work harder or much, much harder than everybody else. They work much, much, much harder than everybody else. Last week, I did my own mini survey of successful people I know in the industry. Not surprising, each one of them had worked between 8 and 12 years of very full days before they could point to the milestones that validated to them that they'd mastered their craft. I did the math for myself after I read the book. I was in this business for 12 years before I'd mastered enough disciplines to pull together all the pieces and to pull together a team of very gifted people who had the skills that I lacked before I financed my first movie. During those years, I did everything from international and domestic film sales. I did some film acquisitions, I did contracts, I did collections, I did servicing, I even did a little bit of physical production. Over that period, I did a lot of learning and failing. I did a lot of digesting and failing. I did a lot of listening and experimenting and failing. And I also had a lot of mentors. I put in my 10,000 hours over 12 very challenging years, and it paid off. Here's what's interesting. After financing our first film, the same team that put that film together financed 3 to 6 films every year thereafter. One of the most important lessons I learned over that time of getting movies financed is that this is a team sport. There are far too many disciplines involved to master them yourselves. So your next challenge is to identify the parts of the equation that you love and excel at and start to build a formal or informal team of people around you who are equally driven and excited about the parts that you don't relish. This may sound a little overwhelming, but you have to remember that the people in this business are the most passionate people in the whole world. And there's somebody who's as passionate about their part of the equation as you are about yours, and you have to find them, you got to put them together. With leadership, people will happily follow you on your mad adventure. There's a quote that I love. Hard work is a prison sentence only if it doesn't have meaning. Once it does, it becomes the kind of thing that makes you want to grab your wife around the waist and dance a jig. If the prospect of 10,000 hours of work and the pursuit of learning how to finance movies makes you want to dance a jig, then you're in the right room. If not, I've just done you a huge favor, and you should go find that thing that you actually love. Now let's get into some specifics. The best salesman that I know has a saying that I think is gospel. It's a really important one, so listen to this. 90% of your success is what you have in your briefcase. He always says that. 90% of your success is what you have in your briefcase. 10% of your success is how effective you are at influencing others to act on your behalf. If 90% of your success, if that's true, depends on what you have in your briefcase and what projects you choose to devote your time to, you have to have a rigorous process of evaluation, both creatively and financially, to figure out where your project fits in the marketplace. This is an important point. I'm not just talking about your subjective view of quality. What you're actually trying to do here is develop a view of your project within the context of what the market is telling you it actually wants and what it's willing to pay for it. It's just not good enough just to be passionate. This business demands a combination of passion and intelligence if you want to succeed. So my answers to Susan's question earlier of how do I get paid, in a sentence, is simply this. Develop something that has extraordinary market demand in which your contribution is essential. I believe if you open your eyes and ears to the marketplace around you, there's actually a systematic way you can improve your chances of getting your movies financed. If you can learn to listen to the market, you have the chance to actually choose how you're going to play in it instead of have the market choose it for you. You probably think you're doing this already, but let me ask you a couple questions. How much are you guys reading? How many people in here read 20 scripts this week? Got 3 hands. Okay. And where are you getting those things that you read? I want to paint a picture for you what I mean about listening to the market, because it's something every single one of you can do. What I want you guys to do is I want you to make a list of 10 films, current films that you guys love. Then what I want you to do is I want you to call the producers of every one of those films. And if you can't get the producer on the phone, I want you to ask to speak to an exec. And if you can't get the exec on the phone, talk to the assistant. Tell them you love the movie. Tell them you want to read the script. Ask them to send it to you. And then I want you to ask that same guy, I want you to ask if they read anything else recently that they fall in love with, and have them send it to you. And then I want you to call the next producer. When you talk to that producer, you're going to ask them the same questions, but you're going to share that project that you got, that other new movie that somebody fell in love with them. If you do this 10 times a day for the rest of your career, in no time you're going to be reading everything in this marketplace that's trafficking that people think is good. You're going to be building the relationships that are going to grow your entire career. You may even find some things that you want to put in your own bag. But the most important thing that's going to happen out of doing this is eventually you're going to read enough material to truly measure the projects in your bag within the context of everything else that's trafficking out there.